Okay. Oh, nope, not yet. Hey folks. Hey folks, how we doing? Welcome. That's Jennifer. That's Trisha.
Hi.
Jennifer on my right, your left. Trisha on, yeah, whatever. Um, so, got just a few things here tonight, and we got a ton of stuff. We're gonna be here for a while, so pack a lunch. Tricia has lined up a whole boatload of things to show us. I'm excited to see it all, and you're going to enjoy it, I'm pretty confident. So let me get some of the announcements out of the way right away, and then we'll be underway. So I'm taking Jennifer and Tricia right back off, so say goodbye to them for a second. There we
Bye.
go. Okay. So, all right, so the show tonight, sponsored by Needle in a Haystack and Sassy Jacks. You can see those up at the top there. Kathy sent me some information from Needle in the Haystack. So I'm going to read that to you. Whether you're an experienced embroiderer seeking specialty threads, a needlework frame for a workshop, or a beginner taking your first steps into selecting the right hoop and linen fabric for a project, you'll find our curated collection of needlework materials and accessories comprehensive and inspiring. We are here to guide you in your selection of the most suitable materials to make you a success. Our expertise in a wide range of techniques and quality materials is designed to assist our customers to achieve a beautiful end result. So whether you're planning to stitch your next masterpiece with real metal threads, and she is a good source for those, or you want to kit up a sampler project and use silk thread for the first time, they are here for you. It is Kathy and her people's belief that needlework is practical and rewarding luxury within reach for everyone. And throughout the years, Kathy and company have been an avid supporter of the new specialty threads, fabrics, and needlework frames that have been developed for Tricia's courses, and currently stocks a wide range of merchandise for raised embroidery. So, yeah, Kathy is the source for Tricia's, when you see the materials for Tricia's caskets, Kathy is the source for those. So a lot of these innovative threads and linens can be used in needlepoint, embroidery, and counted thread embellishment. And some of her offerings include slate frames. I just discovered that the other day. I'm going to be getting me a slate frame. And other hard-to-find accessories. And she now has Allison Cole's 2 books in stock. Goldwork Masterclass and Beth Stumpwork Masterclass. Beth. Pause for Beth to realize this. Okay. Both of which are must-have titles for any embroiderer's personal library. If you're inspired by these types of needlework techniques, Beth, please keep in mind that we have parts and pieces to do them. We're proud to support this Fiber Talk show and hope this will give you a whole new perspective on the world of beauty of a present-day embroiderer's work who provides inspiration. And visit needlestack.com to take a look. Actually, go through the website. It's like treasure hunting. It's basically what that is. And then also check out Kathy's laser accessories that she does under the Floss Queen name. She makes some really nice stuff. Yeah, that website is just fun to go through. And then they ship worldwide. So you folks outside of the States, Kathy will ship to you. And then our other sponsor, Kim at Sassy Jack Stitchery. And if you were with us last Friday, you got to see all the neat things coming up with Jeanette Douglas. And but the big introduction last week was the new Sassafras sampler, Christian Henry 1816. So that's a brand new Sassafras samplers chart, Christian Henry 1816, a really nice one. Kim has the charts, obviously, because she created it, but also kits are put together, so go visit the website for that. And then Hollandsey Merklop. Did I get that right, Jennifer? Okay. Okay. Hollandsey Merklop. Okay, that's a Jeanette Douglas sampler. That's new. You want to? That's coming up. And then remember now the Learning Stitches class that's ongoing. Get that book and get involved in that Learning Stitches. It's just an excellent way to learn some specialty stitches and have fun doing it. And then after that is over, then there'll be the stitching album, which is another set of stitches that Jeanette has put together, and the two in tandem will give you a nice collection of samplers of stitches, specialty stitches, and some experience just by doing little pieces. Some experience. I'm showing you what little pieces are. See right there? Yeah. She'll give you some good experience with that. So check that out, and then remember now to keep your eye on the website there, sassyjackstitchery.com, because in May 2021, all things go right, we'll be at Weaverville for Jeanette Douglas Tapestry of Stitches live class. So watch for that. Kim was busy with her soiree last weekend. I'm sure that within days, if she hasn't already have that set up, you'll be able to register. Act quick because it'll fill up and you want to be in on that back in May 2021. So that, thanks to Sassy Jacks and Needle in a Haystack for sponsoring this show. Really appreciate that. And then a couple of announcements now for you. On September 28th now, we start on Monday night, September 28th, we start the Fiber Talk Monday Night Hearts. And that's going to be some of us stitching Gay and Rogers' new hearts, but other heart designs. Jennifer has the swans with their faces crammed together that makes a heart. And so that's going to be her heart thing. And then we've determined if you have a functioning heart, then you participate. That's how that works. So that'll start the 28th, and then every Monday night, just kind of plan to stitch heart-based designs and post them on Instagram. And we'll get more detail coming up real quick, because that's coming up real quick. Then the last Friday in September will be the last Friday night show, because we're moving the Friday night show on the first Sunday, October 4. We're moving that live show to Sunday, October 4 at 2 o'clock, and that's when we're going to start the Fiber Talk Meditates series for 8 weeks. So it's going to be meditative stitching, some breathing, some stretching, some meditation, and the basis for that is Krista West Avlia's new basket weave design. But you can stitch anything that is meditative. The idea is to stitch something that doesn't have you looking at the chart every 3 seconds. So something you can just get a needle and thread and just go. And if you need something meditative, you can try the basket weave, or you can go to the Avlia site, and Krista has her charts that are meditative marked with an M. And Kim at Sassy Jacks carries all of the Avlia line, so you can call Kim and get yourself kitted up with any of those things. So that starts October 4, 2 o'clock Eastern Time. That's live on here on the YouTube channel. So that's all the announcements. And then there's no drawing tonight. We'll gang up on the drawings Friday night, is what we'll do.
Beth said that I'm muted.
You were, and then
you're
not. You were.
Okay.
I muted you for a minute, and then you're not.
Okay.
So it's okay. Thanks, Beth.
Right. Just for the questions later that I have to do. You know.
Nobody is mute. Nobody is muted now. All mics are live. So, yeah. All right.
All right.
That gets it out of the way, and so we get to turn things over to Tricia. Now, Tricia has I have photos and I have videos, and then we have a second camera set up at Tricia's house in the kitchen there on the table. And you have old caskets.
I have old caskets.
And new caskets.
New caskets, and the unfinished caskets, and caskets without the embroideries on them, and fun things in little drawers.
Buckle up, folks. Buckle up, folks. It's going to be a while. We got lots to look at, and I'm not quitting until I see it all. So, if you want,
I have a mirror. I have embroideries that nobody has pretty much seen very much before, because they're not mounted on the caskets yet. So,
here we go.
Should we start with? Where should we start? We can start with the casket that we were talking about starting with, which is the Harmony casket.
Let's do that.
Can everybody see my my screen? With
whoops! Whoa! Stop that thing. There it is. Okay. Yep. You're on the screen. It's working.
All right. So I'm on the screen, and the casket's on the screen?
No, just the casket. Just the casket
okay,
on the
great.
screen.
Just
yep.
the casket.
Full screen.
So this is the Harmony casket. This is a current course that I'm running, and it's pretty much the last of the casket courses that I'm doing. For those who don't know, I've been doing this for about 10 years, trying to do reproductions of embroidered cabinets, which is a particular passion of mine from the 17th century. And we are getting to the point where all of our artisans are retiring for good, and so we're near the end.
Tricia, I'm gonna interrupt you here. Folks, remember Sassy Jacks and Needle in a Haystack sponsored this show, but I'm taking those logos down because they're getting in the way of the view here. So there we go. Go back to it, Trish.
All right. So I'm going to pull up and hopefully show people the top of this thing right here. And you can see all the stump work and all of the interesting stitches on it. We're going to come back to this and some of the real details of the cabinet, but I wanted to kind of give people an idea of what these cabinets look like. And I'll show, and people can ask questions, and Jennifer will bring them into view for me as we need.
Yes.
Here you can see the side of it.
Now now I have a question right out of the gate. So when people do this, when they do a casket, and buy the underpinnings, the infrastructure, and then you have a set of designs to cover all those panels, but then people encouraged to change that, do their own things. Everybody, the idea is for you to come
Yeah,
up
so
with a.
there's been a couple of waves, Gary. There was when I began this whole project, it was just as you're kind of saying, where you learned how to put the things onto the cabinet. You purchased a cabinet of the size you wanted to in the price point you wanted, and then I helped people figure out how to design. And then they could use the stitching methods of their choice and the threads, selected anything from their stash or anything that was in the reproduction threads that I was making. And that kind of time has passed
Okay.
because unfortunately, but it's the way it is, because when you get to the point where we're getting to the end of all the artisans, like the paper maker, the people who would make the little tapes that go along the edge here, you get to the point where you need to be able to send everybody everything that they need, because they can't come back 10 years later and say that they need something because those people are already retired.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we are right now, and we're actually halfway through the end of that process at the moment. I always encourage people to change this casket. If they stitch this casket and they decide, let's say, I have one student, as an example, who I have shown her several engravings. She would like to have on the top a woman who weaves instead
okay.
of playing a music. And that figures, quite well, into something like that. So we looked at all the 17th century engravings of women who wove, that, has the spider coming down for Arachne, the allegory.
Mm-hmm.
And she is currently drafting that. And that is going to be a fantastic, casket. I have some students who have changed the flowers here to be, instead of being kind of these figural flowers, have changed them to be Australian flowers. So I encourage that quite a bit. I also encourage them, if they want to change, let's say they change the figure on the inside here, because that's a very easy design change to a piece like this. Let's say you wanted it to represent your family instead. What I would do is encourage them to put their house in it. Let's say. And then you could put, son here, daughter here, other daughter here, so you can make it your own.
Yeah.
Often people, what they will do, I've seen quite a few examples so far in the class where they have a dog that is a special dog in the family, and they embroider the dog to look just like their dog.
Oh, okay.
So there's many different ways you can personalize things like this. You can see the kind of general way that the flowers are done, and you can replace the flower with a different type of flower that might be something that's very specific to your region or something that you care a lot about.
Yeah.
So in that way, yes. The other thing that people, go ahead.
What we're looking at here, your design or a reproduction from an original?
Well, that's a really interesting question. So what we did when we were doing the class is that we found all of the unfinished pieces of 17th century work of this type and traced the designs and put together an enormous library of design units, and that all the students in that original Cabinet of Curiosities got those design units. So if they didn't want to draw anything themselves, they wanted to put things together to try to make a design that was similar to a 17th century design, they could do that. In the end, we ended up figuring out that this is exactly how the draftsmen at the time worked. They had these kind of templates, they had kind of pieces of designs that they inputted into things. Like if you're doing a stump work picture, you might have flowers in the four corners, and then these little cartouches that would have parts of a story in them. And maybe the next person who came in and wanted design, they wanted a different story, so they just substituted a different story in the cartouches. So if you look at a wide range of these, you all of a sudden start to see that they were plugging and playing pieces of design.
Oh, okay.
And so what we did actually is for the people who were in the Cabinet of Curiosities course, they actually got this particular panel right here with an empty area in the middle, and they could take any of the other characters and place them in the middle.
Oh.
So it is a 17th century style design, but we did, so there is no one casket out there where I can point to and say, yes, the casket owned by the Victoria and Albert Museum, this casket is there. It isn't. But if you were to go through and look at all the embroideries of the 17th century, you would recognize the design
Okay.
going
Okay.
through it, the whole thing. So it's inspired by the thing.
Yeah.
So, are these caskets, are they beginner friendly?
Great question.
Or-
They are beginner friendly. This one was designed specifically to be beginner friendly, but yet at the same time expand a person's repertoire. And what I mean by that is if you take a look at, let's say, the top there in the corner, that is satin stitch with some French knots. And that is relatively, beginner embroidery techniques. And then you start getting over here and you look at something like this right here, which is a cardigan, which looks really difficult, doesn't it?
Yes.
But what? Yeah, I know, yes. But the more difficult something like this looks, the easier it is to do, because what it is all the flash and bang is the thread, and you're just couching it down
Oh.
with a bunch of long stitches. So I'm not sure how close I can get into there. Actually, if you pop up a photograph, let's see here. I think photograph number 3.
All right. Okay, we're back.
Okay.
We're back
I
now?
gotta watch that. Yeah. Okay, so start over with
Okay.
this. Start over with this because I probably muted the whole
Okay,
thing
so
out.
what I was saying was that those. Do you have the picture up yet?
I do. The picture's up. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So those in the lower corner below her feet, those are pieces. Those were originally in the 17th century from the passementerie industry, and they would take strips of parchment, they would wrap it with silk, and then the person could bend it into that shape, and then they would just take long stitches and stitch it to the ground fabric. What we've done is we've worked with passementerie companies in France to have this pre-made, and it's what they're using now. It's got a wire inside of plastic that so when you bend it, it stays where it's bent, and it's
Okay.
wrapped with the silk. And so you just cut off about an inch, bend it into that shape, and then 5 or 6 long stitches, and you're done. You're off to the application of the next one. So Jennifer, for the person who asked that question, a lot of things on this casket are like that. If you want to look at 5, picture 5, which
Yep.
is that right there, down
Got it.
area.
Yep.
Okay, so that pink, yellow, green, purple, blue, that's a wire gimp that you cut a piece of it and you wrap it around pegs on a little wire jig, and then you just put it on the surface and you took 2 stitches to couch it down, and then you put the next one on top of it, 2 stitches to couch it down until it overlaps all the way around the circle.
So this
That's relatively simple to do.
this stuff is impress your neighbors without any effort. Wow.
You have got it. Totally got it.
Nice.
So Gary, when I look at stump work now, I often will look at it and I will tell you immediately if it was a professional who did it or if it was a girl who had a little cash who did it. She didn't have a lot of skill, but she had cash. She went to the store, she got some really impressive threads, and she couched it down to the surface. And that's how she did it. She didn't have a lot of skill.
Uh-huh.
The professional ones were all needle lace.
Oh, okay.
So the way I approached designing this particular cabinet was to say, okay, I want like 60% of this to be 60 to 70% of this cabinet to be simple stitches that we all feel confident doing, like satin stitch and couching,
Mm-hmm.
and then the rest of it to stretch the person to do something that they are a little bit out of their comfort zone and learn something new. Now, the great part of it is, so let's say if you turn me back to the secondary camera here.
You're back there. Now, hang on just a
Okay.
second. Any way to turn up Trisha's volume? Trisha's loud as can be in my ear.
Yeah, here too.
Yeah, Liz, try turning up your volume because she's as loud as I am here. And I'm a loudmouth, but
And my
try.
kids tell me that I scream on Zoom.
Yeah.
Okay,
We've had questions about what are the caskets used for? How do you get the
Ooh, I'll
dust
get to that.
off? Yeah,
Okay.
stuff that I thought, and then questions about the class. I guess
Okay.
the class online questions about that, but I figured you'd get to those later.
Yeah, I will. Just
Okay.
remind me to make sure I don't miss them.
Okay.
So what I wanted to say is that if you look at this right here, this is needle lace, these exterior petals. The way that they did this in the 17th century is the draftsman drew the entire pattern on. You went and bought it, then you made your decisions on stitches. So that meant if you were going to do something like this where it was detached, you unfortunately had the pattern behind it on the ground fabric. So the technique that they always did was, if you can see, if I can pull this apart, can you see how you satin stitch the back?
Mm-hmm.
So if a student, let's say, gets to the point they're trying out the needle lace and they say, well, it doesn't work out for me, they still have the satin stitch on the back.
Okay.
So you can omit it, is what I'm saying. So that everything has something behind it.
And it adds such a great depth, though. Having
It does.
That.
It
makes
does.
It,
And it's different. Yeah,
Yes.
it's different than the way Jane Nicholas does her stump work, which is absolutely gorgeous because she pre-plans what's going to be detached and not attached. And so that shadow work is really a hallmark of 17th century work, and that's why I add it in. Now, somebody asked about dust, and the majority of these cabinets,
Yeah.
including pieces that are old, usually have a plexiglass cover that you put over it to keep the dust away, because otherwise, you're not going to take a feather duster to this. What was the other question about?
Beginner and about your classes. A lot of the personalization you were talking about. If in the classes, if you go into explaining how people can do that.
I do, but also the classes are actually interactive in that I have an online Facebook-like group. It's called Ning. And it's called Cabinet of Curiosities. And anybody who's in a class of mine gets a password to that, a personalization for it. It's private. And there, everybody chats back and forth. People become friends from all over the place. And so somebody can put in there and say, hey, I'm working the Harmony casket. And there's, of course, 200 people in it. And they say, well, I'm interested in putting my house there. Now, I'll get a message that says that they've asked that question. I can respond, but I can respond in front of everybody else. So everybody learns something at the same time who happens to go into the chat room and looking at that particular topic. People will also, they'll do their designs and then they'll put it up in the picture section, and others will say, maybe if you added a bug there, it would fill that white space. So far, everybody's just been really, really positive, which is fantastic, and helps each other. So you might have, 20 voices helping you versus just my own, which is great. And sometimes people will put up another picture of something else that they saw as a suggestion or a help, give them links. So it's this community that's built up around the cabinets.
Nice. Oh, and the other one was, what do you use the casket for?
What do you use the casket for?
Yes.
So think of this as, they were put together by 13 to 18-year-old girls, usually in schools.
Okay, Trisha, I got to stop you for a second. People say they're hearing a lot of noise like a fan. I'm not hearing anything. Hearing buzzing.
I hear a little bit of buzz, but it's quiet.
I'm not hearing anything.
I'm hearing it personally.
Are you?
I hear a little bit of something too.
Because if we can make that go away, it'll help people.
Nobody in my house is doing anything.
And I got nothing going on here.
Yeah, it seems like it's a
What was that?
Would it be AirPods?
Could be.
Mine are good. My hair is not touching.
No. I don't know.
Try a different headphone.
Okay.
Technology. Just love it.
It's
Yeah.
awesome though. We can do all this stuff. I mean, a
Yeah,
little bit less-
folks, we got two cameras at Trish. We got Jennifer, and then two things going here, and so yeah, it's amazing we pull it off.
Yeah, well, the just back to the casket question is we try to put on a new set of headphones. Here.
Okay.
Let's see. All right. Yeah, the noise is still there,
Yeah.
and it's not the headphones.
No. I don't. Yeah, and I'm not hearing it. So let's go on. I don't think we're going to solve it.
So what I was saying about the use of these things is that the little girls made them, and imagine that this is the device, this is the object that they put all of their needlework tools in, they put their jewelry in, and their little toys in. So I always think of it as the ultimate Barbie shoe mansion, where you hide all your little Barbie shoes in it. That's really what it is. And to make that point, I can open up this casket right here, right now, and show you what I keep in it. So that's the back of the cabinet right there. And then you go down and you find things like the toilet bottle, which I don't know if anybody's watched my video on how these were just reproduced, but there's a whole video online of that. And there would have been rose water, etc. in it. And you have little spaces like this. And this is a line of casket toys, we call them. Little needlework toys that they made in the schools as well. And they put them in their cabinets. And there's quite a few cabinets that have these in them. Different flowers made out of what's called lace-it, which is, I'll get to that later when we unbox the Cabinet of Curiosities kit. But they kept all kinds of little doohickeys in it. There's a trinket box in there right now, another little box. And then there's a sampler, and there were samplers that were kept in some of them. So here you have a sampler. This is the sampler from my whitework course with colored Remicella in it. And this is actually, I know I was watching one of your programs recently, and you were talking about the sycamore seed pod fabric.
Mm-hmm.
That's this fabric, and it was made for this project. This is the actual reason why the sycamore seed pod happened.
Oh.
And if we ever get on another call about whitework samplers, I'll show you the original samplers and all the test samples for dyeing that we did in order to get to this particular fabric.
Wow.
So that's kind of what they did with them. Now you can take a look on the inside of this, and you have little secret places for things. And there's a matching one on the other side here. And then this entire panel comes out. Right there.
Oh my.
The fun
Oh, wow. Nice.
So nothing is as it appears then.
Nothing is as it
Yeah.
appears. No. And when you're asking about the beginner piece of it, you know, the lessons are stacked so that you get to a place where you're really up your skill base as you go along. But I wanted to show you this right here. That looks hard, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That is a fringe. That's a silk fringe that we had specialty made, and it's thick. And you just couch.
Oh, wow.
That's about 10 rows of couching. Of that
Oh,
fringe.
nice.
That's it. So the
Awesome.
appearances are deceiving. And
Wow.
a lot of stump work is all about taking really outrageous fibers and making them do the work for you.
Yeah. So are these made of wood? Like the base pieces are wood?
The
And then, yeah.
Okay, so let's move over. If you want to take me off the screen so I can move for a second.
Okay.
Assembly now that I'm tethered.
Okay. We'll just make them look at me.
All right. So here we are.
Okay, I'm going back now.
Right.
Okay. Oh my, yes.
Okay, so here we are. This is almost 400 years old. This is an actual bare cabinet from the probably 1650s. And what happened is over time, the embroidery rotted off of it. And so somebody took it off, and then they put this horrible brocade from the 1900s on it with, was like kind of a hot glue. And so we've removed it. And what that allowed us to do was actually see exactly how it was constructed. And this is the actual model that we used in the workshop to do all of our CAD drawings off of, as well as the x-rays of the locks to try to figure out how the locks were made and then have those reproduced. So yes, the cabinet is made out of wood, and then what happens is that it is covered with paper, and then the fabric is glued onto that, or the embroidery is glued onto that. And behind here, right there, is an actual piece of mine, which is in process. So it's ready for the embroidery to be put on. So you go from this, and you use this wheat paste with this really lovely handmade paper by a conservation paper maker up in Maine to get to that particular stage, where the embroidery is protected from the wood.
Okay, so that's the function of the papers, to keep the acid from the wood away from the embroidery.
Yes, and it also makes a better bond between the embroidery and the paper, because what you do is you back the embroidery itself with paper as well, using the wheat paste, and then it functions more like a piece of paper, and then you can cut it out and paste it to the paper covered cabinet. And if you give me a second here, the tether is a little difficult.
So the wheat paste, is it more friendly towards the needlework, or
Yes.
what?
Yes.
Okay.
So here is a piece of embroidery which is finished for a cabinet like that, and you can see the paper on the back.
Oh, okay.
Now so what I did is I worked with the bookbinding conservator at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, and we came up with we did some analysis of glue from an actual cabinet to find out what glue they actually used, and we buffer it so that it's non-acidic before we send it out. And yeah, so
Wow.
here's another piece which is ready to cut out, and that's that piece right there.
Gosh, it's so
And
beautiful.
that is ready to go on the inside of doors right here, like this. And so when you open up a cabinet that I'm working on, you'll see this immediately.
Inside the door, yeah. Yeah.
And now this, again, looks really amazing. But again, it is, if you can see a little bit closer here, it is high-value threads used with very simple stitches, couching or threading and sewing it on like a bullion, what do you call it? A bugle bead.
Oh.
Oh.
And there's those same bottoms right there. You can see that a little bit better couched down.
Yeah.
The fringe.
So
So
you
you-
didn't actually have to make bullion stitches. You just took a thread and looped it, and it looks like you did bullion stitches.
You got it.
Oh my! Wow.
These are actually what I would
Nice.
call little wire springs.
Oh.
Okay. And if you wanted to put up the video about the silk pearl, I don't know if I can't see it probably, but
No. Okay, coming up here.
okay. In that particular video, one of the ancient gold thread makers in England,
Whoa.
a woman named Dot. Is it up?
It's up, yeah.
Okay. It's a woman named Dot. She is in her 60s, and actually she's on medical leave at the moment. But Dot is making a silver pearl. So you see the wire, and she's wrapping it around what's called a needle. That's a very large pearl. That's about twice as large as the ones I'm holding onto my hand. But she's going to spin the spinning wheel, and the wire will wrap onto the needle, and then at the end of the video she'll pull it off, and you're going to see how flexible it is, and you can cut it into pieces and thread your needle through it and stitch it onto a surface. And in this particular case, what we do is we cover the wire with silk first and then make the springs, and that's what we call silk pearls.
So the company in England that makes the gold work threads, they're still doing it in this way?
They are still doing it in this way.
Wow. By hand? Everything
By
all-
hand.
Oh my gosh. And that's a spindle spin wheel, right? Not a
Yes.
plier. It's the
Yeah.
spindle.
Here, I'm just
Yeah,
gonna
That's
I'm
like
gonna
what
play it
my dad
again.
and I made.
Yes. So what's really astonishing when I go into all the thread making places is how the equipment that they're using tends to be still from Victorian era. And so there's a lot of handwork, there's a lot of knowledge into where to put the brick to make the lever go where you want it to go. And, which, from my perspective as an engineer, process engineer, I'm horrified because reproducibility is a problem.
Right.
But at the same time, I also look at it as an advantage because they're not so computer controlled that they only want to make one product. Since they make small volume products already, I can then have them make something that I design. And so I take advantage of that in that way. And so pretty much we do a lot of limited edition threads where I know that I can kind of saturate my group of thread fanatics for stump work, and then we don't make it again. And we go on to the next thing that we want to reproduce because we've seen it on a piece of stump work and said, wow, could we make that? That's exciting. And I still have a number of thread lines that I want to do because, to be rawly honest, I want it.
Yeah,
So-
yeah.
That's why some people will say, well, are you going to make any more? I'm like, well, heck yeah, because I don't have it myself yet. Once I have it myself, then I'm a little satisfied.
Okay, I'm going back to your tabletop, Tricia.
Okay.
That is amazing. Oh my goodness.
So, would you like to see me take apart this cabinet right here?
Yes, but I have a question. So this cabinet, then, you analyzed and measured and X-rayed, and so the cabinet that you created is as close of a replica as is possible to get, right down to
Yeah.
the locks, the hinges, the whole shooting
Yeah.
match.
We actually took some of the hardware off, like this hardware right here. This piece right here is the reproduction. That is an original, and there's an original set in England right now that's being used to do the casting.
Oh,
So there's a piece of hardware here missing because it's in England for casting. So all of the hardware actually came off of original cabinets, and we recasted them, as well as all of the locks being made the same way as they were made in the 17th century. We even did wood analysis to try to figure out what the wood was. Now, we did make a couple of changes for modernity because I don't know if you can see here. You see how this is curved?
mm-hmm.
Door is curved. So the door is curved because they have to do a big mortise here and a big mortise here in order to put the lock in. And the door curves within minutes of doing that. This is not an artifact of it being 400 years old. It's immediate. And so we had to go through a lot of different engineering concepts of how we would solve this problem. Because as much as I can tell people this happens as soon as you do the construction, they still want their door to be straight.
Oh,
So there's some things that we made 3 changes in order to make the box better, and that's it. Nothing else.
wow.
The problem is how we constructed the door, which was really the wood that we used. We actually used a specialized airplane plywood fabricated just for the purpose. We also used that for this piece right here, because this piece cracks all the time in the old cabinets, and then this piece right here.
Mm-hmm.
So we did those changes so that the whole integrity of the box would not crack. And then we did this funny set of testing because we knew these boxes were going to go to high humidity environments and also very low humidity environments where the
Right.
wood would have an opportunity to shrink. And so one cabinet took a bath in my bathtub for several hours to see what would happen. And then one cabinet actually was baked in my oven for days to see if we could
Oh,
and anything we saw, we made changes in order to take care of that problem.
Oh wow. So are you ever going to put any needlework on this antique one,
No.
or is this for demonstration?
It's actually a phenomenal piece to be able to see. We see all the construction. I don't know if you can see right here. Can you see this line right here?
Yes.
That tells us something about the people who made it. That tells us, some of these marks actually tell us that it was a joiner versus a regular carpenter. So we actually learned things about it by having it uncovered. And you can see there's nail marks here.
Yep.
So we've learned so much about it. It's worth its weight in gold uncovered. So it will never be covered.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. It's amazing.
So you can see the inside of it right there. And I will make an attempt to find most of or some of the secret drawers for you, because all of these had secret drawers.
Nice.
And anytime you see a piece that's shorter, here, let me see, that's shorter than the depth of the cabinet, you know there's a secret drawer somewhere. So you have it's right here. This one is really, let's see if I can get this one out. Not sure. I'm not going to be able to without damaging it. This is, of course, damaged already because the hinges are gone. But you can pull out pieces like this, and you'll find
Of course. Why not?
where they
Oh my.
another secret drawer here, way underneath there. Let's see if you can see it there. I'll do this on the one that's completely finished, and you'll see a lot of things.
Okay.
So what kinds of things are they putting in these secret drawers?
Well, there have been things found, like rings. See that there's a whole other layer of drawers behind that panel, which actually has a secret lock right here.
Oh.
Goodness.
And the funny thing is that all of these are the same. Like, I can take a look at a box from the outside, its proportions, and I know exactly what the interior looks like, and I know exactly where the secret drawers are. So, all the brothers did, by the way, as well. So there's nothing much secret about it.
Yeah.
They're all it's standard secret to them. But we replicated all of the secret drawers that we could, and added one more to it. So let me move on to another cabinet in the interest of time. Here is another one. This is actually the model for the Harmony cabinet. This one is covered in a wrapped card, and those are so. This is a one piece of card which has been wrapped this way and this way in a pattern with silk to get that pattern on it. It's really amazing. It's one of the only ones I know that's entirely done like this in this kind of beautiful flower pattern. And if we open it up carefully, you can see that the inside is always purple and pink almost. And that's this purple. You can see some of the dark purple right here. This is where the mirror is. The mirror is in the conservation box. But you also see some details where you see that the edges are gilded with a bookbinding stamp.
Oh, yes.
And then you can see things like there's its secret drawer right there on that particular one. This is actually in backwards. I like this one, not for the outside only.
Oh, no.
Look at this beautiful
Oh.
print there, the lovers. I don't know if you can see their faces
Yep.
there.
Wow.
Oh wow.
Beautiful
Yeah.
print. So some of my students have done an amazing thing where they put mirrors that are antiqued. They put prints in the bottom. One lady, Rachel, had a music box specifically made for her box, which is just gorgeous.
Uh-huh.
All right,
Wow.
let's move over to this one right here. Oh, my tether is. I feel like an astronaut here. My tether jerked around. So this box was a gift to me by a special little boy next door. He knew somebody who owned it, and he asked her to give it to me, and she did.
Oh my goodness.
Whoa.
It's a heck of a story, but this is the only one that I know that is actually the story of the prodigal son, and he's like a son to me, which makes it even more special. And it took us a while to figure out the storyline by looking at all the pictures. And I'm going to go around to the back of it here. And we know that partially because as he likes to tell people, here's the part where he's with the prostitutes.
Uh,
You can see the parts of the story where he's found by his father and forgiven,
mm-hmm.
as when he sells his inheritance here, and this is where he leaves his mother and his father right there.
Uh-huh.
It has wonderful internal drawers, and I believe there's stuff in the drawers too.
So someone asked if you're able to tell the country of origin based on the stitching or the cabinet design.
So they are all English.
Oh, okay.
There's only an English thing, and that's part of the interesting parts of figuring everything out. There is a set of cabinets that were embroidered by professionals, but they are made out of black wood, and those are Flemish. But very few of anything are French, and they're not this style. So here we have a secret drawer, and this one has another one of my little cabinet toys made out of laces in it.
So this is not going to come out right, but I'm going to try. Are there like standard box designs, or is each one unique because you can just, whoever's building the box just kind of goes nuts and does what they feel like, or is there just like, can you find 5 that are clearly from the same person by the same design?
This is you're absolutely asking the question that I'm asking. And I did I think I've seen several hundred boxes in person and measured it and taken pictures all the way around. And the problem is that the way that these were made was the draftsman, and there were only 3 that I'm pretty sure of at this particular point, drew the design, and they were in cahoots with particular finisher / cabinet maker, because they were drawing the size of the sides, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the girls would embroider it, and then they'd send it off to the finisher. Well, the way these are constructed, and one of the reasons why it's so hard for us to do anything like plans or kits, they constructed it by measuring this right here, cutting these, putting it together, and then they used that as the measurement for the next pieces to go on.
Oh.
So the box built itself from the inside out, like this.
Uh-huh.
So if you were off, and they didn't have sub-millimeter band saws at that time. So, if it was a little bit too big there, then by the time you got to the end of it, the embroidery did not fit anymore, and they had double edge of tape. So I had thought that if I was going to measure all of the boxes, I'd find, we've got 10 cabinet makers. But you can't, because that particular cabinet maker, every time he made a box, it was slightly larger or smaller.
Okay.
Just by the way that they made them. And of course, we couldn't have that,
Right.
because of how we're doing this project. So
Right.
we had to go to miniaturist techniques in order to build a box so that it would fit. So I'm gonna move here.
So did the girls stitch the pieces first, and then the finisher said it's this size, and
Yes.
then the cabinet maker made it?
The cabinet maker and the finisher had access to the embroidery that was finished already, and they made the box at that time.
Okay. Wow.
I did. So this is a box that we've made. This is one of the simpler boxes we make here. And you can see it on the inside, finished with all the gilded paper, which I have done locally with a bookbinder. And that's my own personal brand to it. Because when we were making these, we actually had to think a lot about how do we make sure that these don't get passed off as 17th century pieces in the antiques market. So there are actually, I quizzed a ton of conservators and curators and antique dealers and said, how would you like me to mark these? So there are actual markings like this, the paper. There's brandings on the box, which can be found. One is secret and one is, easily defined. One is basically not very easy to cover up. And then there's a third thing we did to them, and I can't tell anybody because that's on deposit at the Met and the MFA, so that the curators know in the file they can find out what analytical technique to tell if the box is fine or not.
Okay. Okay.
And it's absolutely obvious. Once you do the right analytical technique to it, it lights up like a Christmas tree, and you know 100% it's 20th century.
Uh-huh.
So, because I feel very strongly about that. If you're going to strive for accuracy, you better somehow, make sure that it doesn't end up on the market,
Right.
incorrect.
Yeah.
So,
So did these little girls have to be wealthy to have these boxes made?
you know what? It's funny. The first time I was handed one of these boxes, I almost dropped it because it was so lightweight. It's like balsa wood,
Right.
Hmm.
and it's so cheaply made. And once I started looking at the locks in detail, okay, and then I started looking at the locks that were made at the time for normal chests of valuables, etc. I realized that these locks are the simplest you can make, and they're like the cheap brass locks that we stamp and put onto girls' diaries.
Mm-hmm.
So everything about the box, unfortunately, I'm going to tell you, is the cheapest possible. They were middle class. They weren't that expensive at the time that we know of. Even the paper, the paper like this, the paper that's over here, the purple paper,
Mm-hmm.
paper that they use to wrap meat.
Oh.
It's basically their butcher block paper. So that gives you a feeling about the relative value of it. So typically an aristocratic girl wasn't making it. It was somebody who was like a merchant's daughter.
Oh,
It was
wow.
So here you can see my pin cushion and its secret drawer. And then this opens up. And you have another secret drawer here. You can move that out of the way. Right there. And then this entire piece is a tray, which comes out, like the one that you saw a minute ago. And in mine, I've put this lovely little print, 17th century print in the bottom of it with the antique glass around it.
Uh-huh.
This particular tray is sized so people can do like a silk quilted side for theirs if they wanted to.
Oh, wow.
So let's go back to the embroidered pieces.
So someone asked if these are stitched in the home counties, and I don't know what the home counties is, so
Not sure what that means either. We're
maybe
pretty
it's
sure.
a typo or like an autocorrect thing. I don't know.
I am reasonably sure that the majority of them were stitched in school, most of it, and that those schools were located in the Hackney area, Oxford, and other environs around London, where we know that all of these middle-class girls' schools were in the second half of the 17th century.
Okay.
So here is a box right here. This is a double casket. And you can see this one has been tent stitched. And I will turn it around so you can see. Now, most of these all had either had allegories or biblical stories on them from the Old Testament, and there was a narrow range of biblical stories, like you saw the prodigal son there. This one happens to be the five senses. So if I can move that out of the way. So here you have hearing with the figure of harmony.
Mm-hmm.
You have taste with the fruit, and then you have the familiar animal here eating. You have sight with the mirror, and then you have smell with the flower. And of course you have the dog smelling down here, the familiar as well.
Uh-huh.
And then here you have touch. Right there, with the bird always tapping. So it's easy to look at all the allegories in the 17th century engravings to identify what's going on in the actual piece of stump work that you're looking at. And after a while, you get really, really good at recognizing the storylines in them. And then often you'll have a man and a woman if it's harmony, because it's marital harmony is the concept here on the front of it. Or you can say that that's Joe and this is Alice, and whoever you want it to be.
Right, right.
So if we want to open it, let's go with opening the top here first.
And so a double casket is like a two-story house then.
It is like a two-story house, and it gets more complicated, right? So the base of this is the same as the base as the casket that doesn't have any embroidery on it, the wood one. It's exactly the same. And then we put a double, the second story on later as the addition, right? So that's the first part of it. And then this is technically challenging with the hands and the
Right.
camera and everything. All right. So when it opens, you have all the goodies in there with the mirror in the back, and then all of the goodies like the inkwells, which was a whole nother reproduction project that if people went to my blog and they went back about 2 months or so, maybe 3 months worth of blog entries, you'll find the whole story of how these came to be, the 10-year story. There's a video about the 10-year story about how these came to be recently, but you take them out. I'll hold them up here. So these were in almost all of the caskets, and they are a inkwell.
Oh.
You put ink in it. And then this one right here is for the pounce powder. And you see that? Can you see the little holes in it?
Yep, I can. Yeah.
Powder? Yeah. So this was an entire long, arduous process to get to the point, because I personally cannot hazard this box for myself unless I have every single piece of jewelry that it requires. The hardware, the papers, the old style mirror, the inkwells, everything. And so I went about and reproduced all of it.
Wow.
Put that in there. So this is exciting because it was only about 2 weeks ago that the bottles were finished and I was able to have a complete box. So I cried at that particular point.
Wow.
It was such a long way to get there. But here you can see they've got, here's a component right here. My angle's not too good. And can you see the little
Yep.
secret door there?
Yep.
No, I'll get it right next time. Over here you have the, you should have put a camera on my head, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's the pin cushion with the little secret door there.
Now, are all these pulls just little pieces of thread, or are they some special thing that you've researched and had reproduced?
Yep. So that is lacet. That is a small flat braid, which yes, I have had reproduced, and that's what all those flowers are made out of.
Oh.
And I'm going to swing right back over here to this cabinet here. Do you see this right here that looks like rickrack?
Yep.
Okay. You take the lacet, you pull one of the silk ends of it, and it makes rickrack, and then you just couch it down with little stitches.
Oh my goodness. That is awesome.
Isn't that awesome?
Yes.
I mean by it looks really cool, but it's not that hard.
Oh my goodness.
So there's another little drawer here. People need to start counting, okay? Because I can't remember exactly how many secret drawers there are. So we've got 3, right, so far?
Yep.
This comes out, so this little pen tray. And then if you open the doors, there is a lock right here that you have to hook with your finger. I'm going to put this down because it's really hard to take this out. Because you have to hook. There you go.
Uh-oh.
And so here's another series of drawers here. And then each one starts to come out. And you find stuff. And when you find a drawer that has that little, see that little hook on the end of it? That there's something behind it.
Oh. Oh my word.
Goodness.
Your ring.
Oh,
So I know people are asking for these things. So you put your jewelry. You put your Barbie doll shoes. Put your pin cushions. This is the perfect place to put all those needle books you've been making. And here's another one. These are actually from the Cabinet of Curiosities course, showing how you can use your colorways in the same color line to get an antique look versus a brand new look. Here we go. Here's an example of the kind of toys that the little girls made. So these are snakes. This is the simplest way to make this kind of technique, where they take wire they cover it with some padding, then they cover it with floss silk, the swallow ball, and then they take gold bullion and they stretch it, and then they cover that. So do you see that it looks like it's frosted?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it sparkles like diamonds right now in my hand, in the light. And so this is, the snake was the first thing they would make, and they would make a tree, and they'd put the snake around the tree, and then they would make an Adam and Eve to stand next to it out of stump work.
Oh, so cool.
But then what they did is they took the technique and they made dogs and little swans. And so if you look at Martha Edlund's casket in the Victoria and Albert Museum, her cabinet is one of the ones that has the most toys in it. She has several animals made out of this in it. And so this is the first you would have made, and so that you find a lot of snakes in the cabinets because of that. Just because it's the easiest to make.
Yeah.
And then here's another secret drawer right here.
Oh, that's cool.
So then that's level number 1, right? We'll go back in. Then we have the bottom level. That's of course where you put your sampler, right, with all of your stitches on it.
Sure.
This is the first project from the Whitework Sampler course. Then you have ones here, and here's another project from the Cabinet of Curiosities. This is the little gauntlet where you put your scissors in. And so in that particular course, I was doing little projects that were casket toys, but they were also learning techniques, like how to do the background in gold thread, so that because a lot of caskets are actually done in tent stitch with gold thread backgrounds or silver thread backgrounds. And we have several underway by students, and they're absolutely gorgeous. So you get in here, and we have another drawer. Does anybody remember how many secret drawers we're at right now? Because I've lost count.
I wasn't even counting. I'm in awe. I can't count.
So here's another project. This is a technique right here that we taught in the Cabinet of Curiosities. It's a loop where you put a wire down on the surface, and you go over it, you couch over it, and then you slide the wire out. And this was used on stump work quite often. Again, pretty simple technique, but gives a really interesting look. And that's the first stage of making velvet. You'd cut it, and it would have a velvet pop up. And here is another project. This one, if anybody's interested in this one, this is for free on my website. These are replica of the little gloves. They're not like you can't put your fingers in them. They're one-dimensional, but they're a replica of the little gloves in Martha Edlund's cabinet. And what they're done is, can you see this right here is the lace-it. It's the little flat braid, and you tack the flat braid onto a piece of contact paper, and then you make little stitches, whip stitches, to whip it together. So I don't know if you can see that the lace-it, I'm trying to get it in focus there, just goes back and forth, and then loops on the top. It's actually really simple, but it's just cute as the bejeebers to have a little, this is her documents, right? This is what this is.
Well, and that,
Contact paper,
let's.
like shelf paper, contact paper?
Yeah, well, they would have used parchment. But
Oh, okay. So you just
you take a piece of muslin and you put a piece of contact paper over it, and then that way your needle doesn't grip the muslin and sew it to what you're trying to do. And then you take the couching stitches down, and then you cut those couching stitches off from the back. And that's actually how most stump work is done, all of the needle laces.
okay.
So that segues actually to this little piece right here, which is in this secret drawer. That's exactly how this was done. This is the last piece of the Whitework sampler course.
Wow.
Goodness.
And you can see it against that. And there's three-dimensional parts, and there's pearls on it as well. And that was made that way. This is actually going to be the band that goes around a miniature nightcap, which is going to go in one of these cabinets, like it was ready for a baby. So you can see all the surprises you can stuff away in your cabinets.
Well, and I was thinking, if you had to run out of the house, what's the one thing you'd take with you? And this would be it, wouldn't it?
Oh my God, I have so many lovelies that I'm not sure what I would be able, yeah. I do have a list. I do actually have a list that's marked up.
No, but I mean, as a little girl,
Oh, as a little girl, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. This is the magical object, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
it's just,
Oh yeah.
it's,
Who
you know,
who was the Martha lady that you said?
I'm sorry, who?
Martha Edlin or
Martha Edlin.
Edlin?
Yes, E-D,
Okay.
yeah.
Someone was asking. I guess I want to look it up.
Yeah, should. Victoria and Albert casket Martha. That'll get it to you on Google.
Okay.
Here's the key for all the locks. The locks do work. As you can, I don't know, you can't see my hand. There it is right there.
Yep.
They do all work.
I have a couple of cabinets that I got when we were in the Netherlands that have locks that work, like big cabinets,
Right.
functional.
So people always ask me, they're like, well, you know, your cabinets are really expensive, and can't I just have my husband make them? And I'm like, well, you can try. Most of them tell you no after they see it, because they know what kind of work it takes. But one of the biggest problems is the locks, because I don't know if you can see this here. Here's a lock. It has a slot here to go into the lock, and the lock goes up and down. I don't know if you see the little piece moving.
Yep.
Well, there aren't any locks today where you can put the hasp, and there's the hasp right there, into the lock, perpendicular to the lock.
Oh.
That doesn't exist. If you want to have free doors that open that don't have a piece of wood going straight down like this for the strike to go into, then what you have to have is a hole down here and a hole up here. And then that's a French lock, is what it's called.
That's what my cabinets have.
Right. But this has a lid that opens.
So you can't do that.
So the locks that they made in the 17th century enabled this configuration. And you can't do it without locks. And we had 1,000 made.
Wow.
There you go. That's the answer. For something this complicated. You know, clearly for some of the very simple boxes, I mean, somebody can have a simple box made by a husband or a woodworker, and, you know, but this one we actually had, because we wanted the proportions to be right, so we actually had the lumber milled. We have 7 stock sizes of clear lumber that's milled to be the different sizes we need for all the different pieces. There are 144 pieces of wood separately cut to make this piece.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it takes 2 months for the cabinet maker and his assistant to make 10 cabinets.
Whoa.
There's a kind of a lifetime limitation on this, as you can see. You know, because people who don't do a lot of woodwork, you know, it's just like asking somebody to make you a sampler, right?
Right.
Or knit
You know.
you socks. You know, can you get me some socks? It's like, yeah, have you tried it? No.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing with all of the parts and pieces. And I hope you can see that this has all been stamped with silver
Yes.
along it. And it's fun to see some of the students have, you know, gotten really creative because maybe they wanted a different color of paper, and so, you know, they go out and they find, you know, like marbled paper to do it instead in marbled paper. Absolutely beautiful. And I really love it when my students do that and really personalize. These right here, I provide templates for people because if they want to do embroidery here and all the drawers as well, so you can really get going and put a lot of embroidery in it. And there's several cabinets that exist that have 3-dimensional stump work gardens in the big open space.
Oh, jeez, really?
Oh, wow.
And I'm gonna somewhat spill that my cabinet that I'm working on right now, which is a class, and there's only 7 places left, has a 3-dimensional garden.
Oh.
So
Wow.
So I think we had some interesting. We had an interesting video that we wanted to get out, right?
Right.
So let's take a look at this particular piece, and I'll show some of the needle lace on it. Right up here, we have the dress, and I think people can see that there's a diagonal to that dress, as well as there's the yellow and the red and the pink stripes on it.
Mhm.
There also needs to be a diagonal to it. So if Gary can get the video up, and I'm gonna have to remember because I don't get to see it.
Yeah.
What the order is on it. I think it shows a close-up picture of the dress first.
Yeah, it zooms in. It zooms in on the dress and the feet. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So this, I can put this camera down, right?
Right. Yeah. Okay. I'm switching over now.
Okay.
And okay, so here we go. So I'm playing the video now. Yep.
So you can see that particular piece of needle lace, and that needle lace is a stitch. The main stitch on it is called something called up and down buttonhole stitch, which is just literally a buttonhole stitch and then a buttonhole stitch done upside down makes one full stitch. And hopefully the animation is starting.
It's now starting. Yes. Hmm.
So all of my classes where I teach any stump work in it, or anything that uses needle lace stitches, you get all these animations in it in order to help illustrate beyond the black and white drawings, because it is a challenge. Our stitches are interesting and challenging, and they need to be broken down using a visual like that to it. Is the stitch?
Yeah. The
done?
first row's done. Yeah.
Okay. Tell me when the animation is done, and I'll tell you what the diagonal comes from
Okay.
the pictures. So that is, I have a wonderful animator who happens to be my brother. He is a computer animator, and he does all the animations of the stitches. And we're up to, oh my God, I don't know how many. We did 50-something goldwork stitches alone from the 17th century, and then we launched into the animations for the stump work for all of the different needle lace stitches, which there's 20-something of those at least.
Jeez.
That's quite a lot of animation.
Yeah. Okay. So it's now we're showing the
Okay.
panel with the box. Yes.
Okay, so many people understand knitting and how people can use different stitches in knitting to make patterns by going, and I don't know, actually I'm not a knitter, so I don't know very well what the names of them are, but I think purl is one, and so what they do in this particular, to get this diagonal is you can use a buttonhole stitch or an up and down buttonhole stitch, and that's B is I believe is in the diagram, the up and down buttonhole stitch, and the A is
Here,
the,
Trisha, let me try and go back to that where that was, because it ripped right by you there.
sure.
There.
So anyway, so if you were to embroider a row of needle
Oops.
lace across using B, like BBA, BBA, and then you shift the pattern on the next row, you get these peaks and valleys. And you can get these wonderful things like diagonals that are supplemental in it, just like you would in a knitted piece. And so they did that quite a lot in these casket stump works. And I think they were actually just totally amazing how they got creative with that.
Yeah. Let me get to the panel where
Yeah.
it really
So
shows.
the bump on the front, that would be like the purl stitch in knitting.
Yes.
Purl makes the bump, and the
Right.
knit stitch makes the flatter
Exactly.
one, right?
Exactly. So let me know when you're back to my camera.
Okay.
Hopefully everybody saw that.
Yeah, I've got it held there on the screen so people can see the stripes and the peaks and valleys.
Right. Well, I have another piece here
Okay.
to show you.
All right.
I
Coming
have
back.
lighting now, right?
Coming back to you. Okay. We're on you now.
All right. So do you see this man in his trousers? And you see that now there's a zigzag pattern, which is by doing that, up and down buttonhole versus buttonhole, up and down in the dark and the light colors of the soie perlée. And that gets you to that kind of patterning, which is just beautiful. And I know Gary wants me to pull out this this camera a little. He's like, "What is that we're looking at?" So this is a mirror frame. They used to do mirror frames.
Holy smokes.
And this is a project from my stump work course. Again, this is one of those projects where, as I said to Jennifer, it's more bang for the buck with the threads than the technique. All of the flowers around that are couched materials entirely.
Oh wow!
And then you have then the hard work, which is the drapes and the king and the queen, are to the center. So I'm always trying to balance when I'm doing a design work for a set of students is, things on the outs, things that they begin with that are comforting and also a lot of bang for the buck. And then, you get to the building up of the lessons to be something that you've never seen before. Because honestly, nobody comes to my courses having done needle lace. if they had done needle lace, they'd be doing their own projects.
Right.
So it's, it's a learning opportunity. So this particular, let me see if you can see this well. So these are silk pearls right here, done in different techniques. And then this is something down at the bottom, right there, called silk soutache. And many people know what a soutache is. It's like a cord. Usually you see it in polyester, but this has been made in silk. And what we do is we put a big fat needle underneath it and do couching stitches on the other side of it, and then it leaves a loop up.
Oh.
That's all you do. And you just keep filling space with it. And it gives this really interesting loopy texture. So it's a really quick and dirty thing to do, but you're using this really interesting thread.
It's interesting how many textures and reliefs you're getting out of really simple techniques.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And then there you go. You've got it's open.
Yep.
There.
Wow. And those animations are part of the course, right? You can't
They
get
are
them unless you're.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
so you have to.
Yeah, I haven't released any of the animations separately.
Okay.
Right now, we actually do, when they do get released, if you want to call it released, they're actually part of a museum exhibition. I let them out for free to museums when they want to illustrate an exhibition. Because I actually worked on the first one with the Metropolitan Museum of Art. They funded the first animation, so we got over the hump. And so the animations have been shown in multiple museums so far.
Wow. So do you have, are all of your pieces going to go to family members in the future, or are you going to have them go to museum? Do you already have it set up at the museum to accept your works?
We already have 2 boxes one at the Metropolitan that's been assessed into the study collection, and one at the Museum of Fine Arts Boston accepted into the study collection. And I am going to consider donating my papers to one of the 2 museums, because I think it's important that further researchers know where all of these boxes came from and are able to research it. And I did the same thing with the Plymouth Plantation Jacket Archive. It's on deposit as well at a museum. And I've already heard from the first graduate student studying the project.
Oh.
Thesis,
Nice.
which is really exciting.
Yes.
Before I even get to write about it. I know. But my children actually do like the cabinets. And there are some interesting ones being made for them. One boy is getting a cabinet that has antique maps from the 17th century around the outsides with the kind of the really, all those dragons and whales and things on those old maps. Those are
I love those.
cartouches around it. Then on the top of it is a 3-dimensional boat rigged up. And I'm talking about 8 inches off the top.
Oh my.
And there's going to be a kraken,
Of course.
right? The deal is I'm an engineer, right? And so are my kids. And so it's going to be animatronic, meaning that you're going to be able to turn right, and it's going to do this. I don't know if you've got
That is awesome.
So, yes. And there's another one that's 3-dimensional as well, which is the box that's covered with paper. That one is going to be the 4. It's going to be Earth, Wind, Fire, and Mother Earth, Water, Fire. I can't remember. Air is the other one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're 3-dimensional. So the Mother Earth is on the top, and it's going to be trees that come out of the top, and she's going to be sitting there with the animals around her, and the cornucopia with all of the 3-dimensional fruits spilling out of it. And so that was already claimed by the oldest child.
Wow.
So it's, but they do have directions that if it isn't going to pass further down in the family, they're supposed to go to museums.
Oh, okay.
As well as my collection of antique, pieces.
Yeah.
In those cases, some of them will be, sold off and benefited the collection back into the collector market, which is okay with me. I just want to make sure they're taken care of.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I think we were talking about doing an unboxing.
Yes.
Oh.
So let's see which is the best camera for that. Because I know people are like, well, what do you get when you do one of these classes?
Right.
So this is one of the kits. There are 3 kits for the course. This is only one of the parts in the first kit, but it's the one with all the cool threads in it. So it's like this, and it comes with a with the listing. Let's see if I can get the camera up a little bit. This is the listing of all of the parts of the kit. Right there.
Wow.
You need a
So-
bigger box.
Yes, so you get things like this right here, which is a silk coil, and I will open it up, see what that is, because it's just, you got to see it move. It is a silk gimp. How well you can see that. If you bring up the picture of the lion,
Yes.
this is what this is stitched down as. This is for the lion's mane. It is a silk gimp, which is a silk cord that is wrapped with another silk thread, and that's called a gimp. And then they take that and they wrap that around another silk thread to give us a spring, but it's very soft. And can people see the picture?
Wow.
Yes. Oh, yes. Hmm.
So there's the dark, some of the dark brown there is the silk coil. Some of the other is gilt silk twist, which is wrapped around a wire frame. So that leads me into gilt silk twist. This is something I know that you can get at Needle in the Haystack as well. And let's see if you can see this one right here.
Here, coming back to
Can you
you.
s-
Coming back to you now. Yep. All right.
Yeah, so gilt silk twist is a thread that we had made for this Plymouth jacket, and what it is it's a silk core with a I don't know if anybody can see it sparkling a little bit there.
Mm-hmm.
It has a gilt wire that is wrapped around it, so you can see both the silk and the gilt wire. And I think if you pull up picture number, let's see here, all my pictures numbers there, 4. You can see the blue petals of that
Okay.
are made out of.
Yep. It's on the screen.
Yeah, blue petals are made out of gilt silk twist and needle lace with a regular buttonhole stitch, and it's stiff, so it's and it sparkles in the light.
Take us through this picture a little bit, will you? Just what we're seeing.
Okay, so you see the blue, which is the gilt silk twist, and you see in the middle of that blue, you see this coiled material.
Right.
Okay, that is called cordon, and that's in this bag too. I've got 8 different colors of cordon here. Sorry, 7 of cordon here. That is a gimp, which is striped. So there's 2 colors of silk which are wrapped around, and so you see stripes. And if you look closely at it, you can see a light and a dark on
Yep.
that coil.
Mm-hmm.
And that's again, it's a pricey thread, but all you have to do is stitch a couple stitches over it in that coil. And this makes for really cool color mixing, because you can change the different colors that are wrapped around it, and maybe 2 colors are not the prettiest by themselves, but they look gorgeous and subtle when they're together.
Mm-hmm.
So then, if you look, well, there's the big, the loops, which are standing off the surface,
Right.
and those are facette. And there's a big old set of boxes of facette in the box. That's another type of gimp that has a wire in the middle of it. It's a rococo, and I know I gave you a video on how that's made, which you can bring up in a second.
Okay.
The other loops that are in the picture are silk pearl, tiny silk pearl. Those are wires that are wrapped with silk and then wrapped around a needle, like Dot was doing with the spinning wheel, but they're really tiny. And then you cut a piece of it off and you thread a beading needle down the middle of it, and then you go down in a very similar spot as you came up with your thread, and it loops it on the surface. And that's all you do. And you get layers and layers of them, and they look really pretty. So, and then at the base of that in dark is a metal strip that is covered in silk, and that's called silk covered plate. And again, you have some stuffing underneath it. You lay the plate over it, you take a green stitch on one end, fold it over to the other end, put another strip stitch over it, fold it again, and you keep going back and forth like that. and it zigzags and covers the space. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Wow.
So if you want, Gary, you can bring up the video, that's the last video, called making frosting, I think.
Yeah, it's frosting thread. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That's the video of the purple of this particular facet being made while I was over in France with Lamora Hadar from Access Commodities. We were working with certain passementerie companies to make some of these really unusual threads we wanted from the tassels that were used on the 17th century stumpwork pieces. And you can kind of see how the cream rococo thread is going up through this orifice, and the purple silk is winding around it. And the rococo means a bump. And so there's this, when the cream thread was made, there was an extra thread wrapped around it to give you this bump onto it, so it looks serpentine in shape. And you probably see it wrapping around the tube now, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm replaying it a second time here.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, it fires
And
right
that's
through.
like core spinning with a spinning wheel, where you have
Yeah.
like the
Yes.
main, and then you hold it perpendicular and you spin it on, and
That's
it's
exactly correct.
right.
Yes. Yes.
I've
And
done
so
a
you-
little of that.
You can see how you can play with all kinds of things now. You can put
Mhm.
a metal plate through there. You can do all kinds of, and you can do two colors at once to make it striped. So we get really excited about all the variations we could make, and then we have to like pull ourselves back because we have to pay for that whole batch. And I mean, we're talking capital here. You know, I'm not exaggerating that my bills come in at, $20,000 a pop. But, and the
Let me go
amount,
get my husband. You can tell him that, so he doesn't feel so bad.
when I said that I saved for 10 years to be able to run this course, I was not lying, because I couldn't get it off the ground without putting 10 years worth of funds into it.
Yeah.
But I wanted a cabinet so bad of my own. And
Well,
then
and-
I just told you about the locks, and we had to make 1,000 of them. We couldn't make 5.
Right.
Right.
So I had to
Wow.
make 1,000. And that I couldn't make the box until I had the locks.
Right.
So you kind of see how it all kind of comes up. That means a whole lot of women got to come along for the ride instead of me just getting my special box.
Yeah, nice.
And it amazes me the most basic machinery to do this.
Yes.
There's nothing particularly sophisticated about it at all, but put it together and then you get this beautiful thread.
Well, and I will tell you, it looks simple, but I'll tell you, it's definitely one of those things where, like a sewing machine, you gotta know where the right tension
Right,
is and
right.
all of that. So during the pandemic, we had a whole bunch of stuff here, and my son had to come back from college with the robot kids, and he helped me recondition some machinery that I'd been able to pick up that was almost 100 years old. And so I actually have prototyping equipment now in my house to make a lot of this stuff myself.
Oh.
Oh, wow.
I've been making stuff like crazy, and then we just designed some new parts, and the machinist told me today that they went out for heat treating, so I'm really excited. But that's the kind of cool thing about the engineering and the embroidery is, I can kind of help make some of the machines that I want to make what I want.
Yeah.
Nice.
So let me show you some of the other stuff that's in the box.
All right. Coming back to you. Hang on. Okay, go ahead.
Talked about the cordon. There's the 7 different colors of greens and whatever cordon. Here's the facette that we were just talking about. Oh, I got frozen there. And then there's a smaller version of it, which is called Rococo. And that you couch down, and it's underneath the girl's feet. Loads of Goblin. Now, I don't know if anybody knows, but does everybody know that I had all of this dyed for me?
No, I don't think people know that. No.
So there's an entire, I do a lecture for EGA guilds or sampler guilds, which is about the material making, just to teach everybody how the materials were made. And there's a whole section in the front about the year that we took to get the colors right, to get an entire historic color line based on the back of the actual embroideries. And I mean, we went to the nth degree to make sure that the blues were a woad blue based on the dyes of the 17th century. And to get a color line that would be extensive enough, but limited but extensive enough to be able to do what they did. And then we make all the base colors, and we dye them in all of the different parts of the Alvera Soie line. And then we make a Soie Oval, which we then take to the other subcontractors to make the other fancy sets. So, you're kind of getting an idea of why there's so much capital involved here.
Right, right.
But it's also at the same time, it's absolutely miraculous. I mean, it's the best, I'm having the best time of my life, because if I'm sitting here stitching something and I say, oh, I want to do this stitch, I don't have to go back out to the embroidery store because I have the right weight.
Yes.
I can go down to the Surfine, and I can go to the Tram, and I can go all the way up to the Oval, the Soie Paris, the Gobelin, the Perlé, and then all the fancy threads. I have a couching thread that matches absolutely everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's fun.
Yeah.
So here are plates, and I'll take one of the plates out of the, so you can see this we built machinery here for this. See that springy thing right there? Let's see if I can get this. Do you see how it's undulated?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So I rick-racked it through a machine after the silk's been put on the gold plate.
Oh.
Oh, wow.
Couch that down. That looks spectacular, couch down. So cheap, so easy. Here's the soutaches. That's the stuff that we make the little carpet-looking thing.
Yep.
The flowers out of. It's a beautiful, beautiful thread. And you've got the perlés, and you've got the 3 packages of Soie Paris, and you've got all the packages of Oval, and then more of the facets. Those are those, and the glues. And this is another interesting thread we had made. This is a different type of striped gimp, and it's done in a color series, so that we can do French knots and other couching of that. When you put it all together down, it looks like green.
Mm-hmm.
The blue and the gold together.
When you have a custom thread like that made and custom dyed to match what you want, what is the minimum run on that? Because I mean, time you go through all that, I'm sure they require you to run an awful lot of it.
Yes. It all depends on whether or not Alvera Soie is dyeing something for themselves, or we have to origin the dye lot. If they're doing something and we know that the particular, because as I'll tell you that spun silk and floss silk, filament silk, do not take dye the same way, so you cannot dye them in the same vat. So if they're doing a déjeuner in that blue, you can't put something in it for me because I only use filament silk. So we get a dye report every couple weeks, and I get a report if they're going to be dyeing something in my line, and then I can decide to throw something in, and then I don't have that kind of quantity issues. I can throw a small amount in, but if we have to origin ourselves, we're talking about 5 kilos.
Holy smokes.
Wow.
Yes.
What's the difference between filament silk and the spun silk?
It's a quality difference, first of all.
Okay.
When you take the cocoon, and I'm going to be doing a basics lecture on this that goes online in the near future, but if you take the silk cocoon and you brush it to find the one filament that was coming out of the silkworm, and you pull it, that is filament silk. And you take the like 20 different ones and you pull them together, that's Soie Oval.
Okay.
Now you can twist it, and then that becomes, if you twist it and then you take 2 of them and put them together, that's a 2-ply filament silk thread. That would be Soie Paris.
Okay. So the silk hankies, those silk hankies that are dyed, and those are like stretched cocoons, right?
Yes, they are. That's the waste. After it's all been reeled off, you have stuff left because it gets tangled and there's a lot of glue and there's extra parts in it. That's what's used for that. And sometimes some of that's used to make spun silk. So spun silk, short chopped lengths, and the quality of the silk thread is based on how long those are.
Right, because I have silk hankings and I'm spinning them on a Russian supported spindle, and you take the middle of the hanky and you pull it out, and you just keep stretching it and stretching it and stretching it until it's the diameter you want, and then you spin it.
Right, right. And that's basically how, wool is done,
Okay.
right?
Right, yeah.
But it's a spun, so it's a short. So you can take and you can unwrap. If you want to see the quality of a spun silk, you can take the plies and twist them in the opposite direction, and they will come apart, and you'll see how long
The
staple is. And a Versoix staple is very long. That's why it's a high quality spun silk.
Oh,
And also
okay.
depends on which moths, which silkworms have been used to make it. And I have upstairs right now all the different types, because as I said, I'm going to do a lecture on this, because not every company uses the top quality white versions. They'll use a different type of moth. So there actually is a huge quality difference between silk threads, and
Yeah.
filament from the white Tassa is the best, and that's what I use.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
As I said, that's something coming, because I want to educate everybody why are the silk threads I use the more expensive silk threads? Because there's a difference in them.
Right.
So let's see. So here's a whole bunch of those little lacettes that are used in the class. And so one lacette, you can see the end there, right there.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
There's 16 ends there of swallow ball.
Wow.
And there's a really interesting thread, which I think is easier to see in this version right here. This is called Crinkle Gimp, and unfortunately we're at the end of Crinkle Gimp. We're not going to make it anymore. It's really hard to make. It has a, this is so wrapped up I can't show it very easily. This is some of the smaller pieces of it. I don't know. Can everybody see that it's bumpy?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So that is couched down, and it also can go in a needle and go through the fabric. And so that's Crinkle Gimp.
Wow. So there's a lot of questions about whether the casket comes with this kit. And then somebody's like, I guess you can't buy caskets standalone.
You cannot buy them standalone anymore. No.
Okay.
And yes, the casket comes in the 2 classes that still exist with the kit. Everything, finishing materials, bottles, inkwells,
Oh wow.
the whole shebang. So that I know when you start the class that if my person retires tomorrow, I've banked all the materials. They're literally upstairs for almost everything already. We spent most of the summer banking the stuff for these classes, so that if they, unfortunately, something happens, we're set. Because
Wow.
I have a lot of people who come back in 10 years and say, well, I stashed this, I want to do it now, and
Right.
Yeah.
So these are all of the different silk pearls that come for it. And then you have some fun things. These are silk wires. Sometimes in a project for stump work, they ask you to cover a wire with silk. Well, we've done it for you. And then some other stuff. I wanted to talk about this because this is really kind of interesting. These are the eyeballs. And I don't know if you can bring up the picture number 6 again,
Well, yeah, I can. Hang on.
or number 2, whichever one of those. I had to have these made, and I had to find a glass artist, and then we had to figure out how they were made in the 17th century, and then make them in the color sets and the sizes that they were made in. So if you can see the eyeballs,
Okay.
now you can see the ring. And they had these glass eyes that were used for taxidermy in the 17th century, and they repurposed them for stump work.
Wow.
Yeah. So everything, literally everything, we've had remade for this.
Boy.
And there's linen and needles and a few other kinds of things in there. So does anybody have any questions I can answer? Because I know we've gone.
Yeah. Yeah, we probably should wrap up here pretty quick, but yeah, were there any other questions hanging out there?
I think I caught most of them. A lot of them were similar, and
Yep.
I might have missed one or two because I was like really fascinated. So,
Now,
I do want to say that one thing that I do is I trust people a lot, and I decided to run my classes on installment because I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just the wealthy ladies who were able to embroider, but everybody. And so I try to run all of my classes on installment so that somebody can start out and then can complete the payments on it over a 24-month period, or in fact, in the biggest casket now, it's a 36-month period. And I send out things, in waves to everybody based on, because it makes it more affordable to do something like this.
right.
Yeah.
wow.
I have a sense looking at what's in the box that there's enough material there that I can be pretty free with my own creativity and not come up short.
Yes, and yes, you're definitely right about that. And some of that is because we have to get minimums, to get the things made. And it's also in the kind of type of thing that you can't find this again. And I will tell you that we are in the time period of the downsize right now, where there's materials that are on the Harmony casket that don't exist anymore, where we have exhausted them and we've made the business decision that we don't have a venue to use them again, so we will not remake them. Or maybe machinery is done, or the craftsman is kind of at the end of what they want to do, and they're done with their career. So I'm doing a stump work cabinet right now called the Four Seasons cabinet, and that cabinet is also exhausting significant numbers of my thread inventory that we've had made up. So we're kind of at the end of this exciting 10-year period. Some things we'll be able to continue on with, but some things will be done and gone. So anybody who's interested in jumping on for the ride.
Yeah. So which classes are still available?
The Harmony with Nature casket has 100, and as of this morning, 108 pieces left. And the Four Seasons cabinet, which is not this design, but that cabinet, the pieces that I had before that had the paper on the back of it, those are for that cabinet. They're stump work. That one has 7 spots as of this morning. So it's a pretty...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you know what caused the original caskets to stop being made? Like, why did the girls stop making them, or?
Not exactly. I think this was a very personality-based business, meaning that it was a couple people like myself and the cabinet maker and the draftsman who kind of were in cahoots together. And it really ran only a 50-year course at best. And so I think that styles changed and went by the wayside. But it was a good run. They had beautiful stuff.
Yes.
Yep.
All right. We got all the other ones in there, Jennifer?
I think so. Lots of people said they super, super, super loved it, and this is their favorite Fiber Talk ever.
Aw. That's so nice. Well, if you want,
It is awesome.
do whitework samplers because I own 4.
Oh, I'm holding you to the whitework sampler because I want to see that. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful ones, museum grade ones.
Yeah, I want to learn about that. Yep.
Yeah, well, really want to learn about it. I'm doing a lecture. I already dropped it this last week for Winter Tour. They're having a symposium online in 2 weeks, I think it is, and I've got what I think is a really great talk for it. I was able to do all kinds of nifty animation and other things for it as well. You see
Okay.
the tech.
Okay, I'm putting this all back on the camera here on the screen. So there we are.
Well, so I'll tell you. Can I tell you my exciting thing that I'm
Yeah.
doing tomorrow?
Yeah.
Sure.
This is the geekiest thing ever. I am so excited about it. Remember, I was talking on my on the podcast about how I was so interested in how they could actually embroider those gold jackets,
Right.
right? Okay, and the gold threads and why and the metallurgy and how could they do that and everything. Well, I've been investigating the gold threads forever trying to find anything that maybe the craftspeople of that time period wrote. And that took me down some really enormous rabbit holes. And I came to find out that it was a significant reason why Charles I got beheaded was actually gold thread. Huge political intrigue, enormous issues with monopolies and henchmen and just throwing gold spinners into jail, which I'm doing a talk on that. So I stumbled upon looking at a guy who was actually regulating the gold spinners, and he was a spy for the government. And you can't make this stuff up. All of the United States patent law is based upon the monopoly issue with the gold thread spinners in the 1600s.
Oh.
And so anyway, I stumbled upon a dissertation the other day which went deep into some of the technology and the economics, and I've been working on this myself, and she's still alive. And I was like, I want to see if I can find this person, because it's the only person who can ever talk to me probably about this subject in depth. I went searching for her on the internet, and I found her husband, and I wrote him an email last night, and she responded to me this morning. We're talking tomorrow. So excited about this. She uncovered all these wonderful depositions that I need to get a hold of now, of all of the gold thread makers trying to steal from the government and make gold threads on the sly and stuff. This great stuff.
Wow.
Making threads in the forest to get away from some of the issues of having to have their threads sealed and everything. It's really cool stuff.
Oh boy.
I love that kind of history.
And you get to talk to her tomorrow. Oh.
I can talk to her tomorrow. So who knows what we're going to come up with, because she had a whole theory, but she was coming at it from the economics and the law, and I have a theory coming at it from the metallurgy and the stitching. And we're going to join our heads together and see what we come up with.
Cool.
So I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
And you guys are much more excited about that than my son and my husband at dinner.
Oh no, that's fun stuff there. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, loved it. I had a great time.
All right.
Awesome.
We're gonna call it. All right. Thanks everybody. We'll be back Friday night. Thanks. Hope folks enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Tricia. That was really good. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That was great. Bye.
Bye.